Hello, welcome back to Chat About It. Don't shout about it with me, Rachel, the Queen of the Woke, as crowned by one of my haters. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed already. I couldn't do this without you. So I put out a vote asking you all which first story I should review next. And CASTROVALVA won the vote, which of course didn't surprise me because Colin and Sylvester had shaky first stories, and McGann is a one and done type of doctor in many respects. CASTROVALVA is the first Doctor Who story from Peter Davison. He was brought in as the fifth Doctor after Tom Baker's epic 7-series run as the Doctor. That episode serial was written by Christopher H. Bidmead. It aired between 4th to the 12th of January 1982. The audience average was 9.6 million people. You hear that, RTD? 9.6 million people in average. This is, of course, the first episode where the Doctor is credited just as the Doctor instead of Doctor Who, and the first time we see Anthony Ainley's name as an anagram to hide the fact that he was also the Portreeve. Now, I am aware that this story is part of the New Beginnings arc. However, I need to review this story fairly as a standalone episode for Peter as the new Doctor. When I review Tom's last episode, I will be viewing that as well as a standalone story, as it's what I would actually call a handover arc, and there are not many of those in Doctor Who at all. But when I do the last stories of Patrick Troughton, Colin Baker, and Jodie Whittaker, those will be looked at in their entirety because those are complete arcs. Now, I recommend if you haven't seen the New Beginnings arc to watch it before this review and then come back to this review. So in The Keeper of Traken, we see the return of the Master, this time played by Geoffrey Beevers. This deformed master, who is at the end of his life, is trying to save himself and takes over Tremas, Nissa's father, offers him to use his life and his likeness. Now, this means that Anthony Ainley, who was playing Tremas, now takes over the helm from Beevers as the master, and he would continue in the role until the show was axed in 1989. And Ainley's master is commonly dubbed as the Tremas master in the fandom. The Doctor ends up on Logopolis, wanting to fix his chameleon circuit for his TARDIS. The Master is also on Logopolis with his own plans. However, they cause major interference and the universe starts to die. The Doctor and the Master have to work together, only for the Doctor to actually discover it was a ruse, this teamwork. The Doctor falls when trying to disconnect a cable thanks to the Master tilting the dish, and he catches onto that cable, but he has visions of his past enemies and he loses his grip and plummets to the ground, and he regenerates into the Fifth Doctor, Peter Davison. Now, CASTROVALVA sees the Doctor struggling with his regeneration, so he goes to the Zero Room to balance himself out and get control of it. Now, Tegan and Nyssa are worried about the Doctor and they wonder what they can do. They find out about CASTROVALVA. However, CASTROVALVA was much more than what they had bargained for. They discovered that Adric had been taken over by the Master to use his mathematical skill for block transfer computation, and that CASTROVALVA is not real. They must escape, but the planet starts folding in on itself, and it takes a very dazed Adric, at this point played by a very hungover Matthew Waterhouse, to get them out of the situation that they are in. I'm going to give some overall points a little bit later on, but now I'm going to take a look at some smaller bits. When I was making my notes for this, I noticed that I had quite a few downs actually, which surprised me because overall it's actually a really good first story. But I'll start off with the good bits. Now, I will probably miss a million things, so please do leave your comments below because I can't name it all. I'm just one person. I am going to start with this. I will say that it was good to see Adric being written the way he was supposed to be written. I know the character was not great for a lot of people, but Matthew himself, of course, was still very much a beginner when it came to acting. and it could show in some of his other episodes. Now, whilst I do agree it could have been Richard Willis who played Adric's brother Vash in Full Circle, it's clear that Matthew in Full Circle actually understood his character's premise when he first began. Now, when Adric is actually written correctly, Matthew performs better because he can latch onto what he knows about the character. When Adric is not written correctly, it's clear he is very unsure as to what to actually do. And that's a common thing with beginner actors when you see them in their early stages. And I believe at the beginning, when he was doing this, he really needed a lot of guidance from the director who was working with him on Doctor Who. Well, the various directors, I should say. So it was actually nice to see that the character was written as the artful dodger type he is supposed to be in part one. Now, whilst that is used as a plot device, it meant that one companion didn't get left in the TARDIS, which became a very common trope with these three companions in this era of Doctor Who. Now, also, it made sense out of all of these companions to have Adric be the one to trap the Doctor and trick the Master. And also, again, also, that word, it was very clear there was something wrong with Adric. It's always easier to latch on to character when they have dominance in the story, and Adric had some dominance in this story, and I feel like Matthew was able to take some advantage with that. Now it's time for a downer. That has to be in the top left-hand corner there, the most gentle search from the police I have seen in any TV program. It was like they just didn't know what to do with the hands and where to put them. This, of course, is something that the director should have really worked on. Most people, most actors, most actresses don't really worry, about sort of the roughness and the aggression when you're trying to act something out. We just don't think about that in that sense. But clearly there was some thinking I must be gentle here. So, well, anyway, the director really should have worked on it with them, but I understand back then there would have been massive time crunches, so maybe it wasn't possible, but it was still a very gentle police search. So the Master offs the police and the decoy Adric tampers with the TARDIS. He finds the Doctor unraveling the scaff. Now, I will say that it's great to see the depths of the TARDIS. I know not everyone likes it, but from time to time, I do actually appreciate getting to see the vast depths of the corridors. One thing, though, I'm not too keen on is the unraveling of the iconic Tom Baker scarf. However, it's not the original, so I can just about accept it, but I'm still not keen on it. Now, how does everyone feel about them being sent to Event 1, the Big Bang? I feel like this was a way of extending time in the TARDIS because theoretically, how many episodes could you have on a block transfer computation planet like CASTROVALVA? Not many. It was written in quite seamlessly, and it was a reason to jettison the Zero Room later to get the Doctor out of the TARDIS, which I now feel like I've just contradicted myself, uh, because I'm a bit conflicted about how I feel about them going back to Event 1, the Big Bang. I will say that the levitating in the Zero Room is pretty cool, and how they achieved that is pretty cool. And how they do Adric's projections into the TARDIS wall is really cool as well. How many times can you say cool in this little segment? The Master gets the cliffhanger too in this episode with the line, "Farewell, my friends. Farewell forever." And you can tell that Anthony Ainley really enjoyed that line. This isn't really a downer, it's more of a funny thing, and I don't think I would ever change this happening in the episode at all. This is when Adric is in the web in the Master's TARDIS, and the Master decides that he's going to rise himself up to Adric's level, and he presses a button, and the delay between pressing the button and the Master being level with Adric makes me laugh because it should have been faster, but I still wouldn't change it for the world. So briefly, we see the sonic screwdriver actually being used as a screwdriver. And that's it. A simple tool in this case to make another zero room or a zero cabinet. Now, you all know how I feel about the sonic screwdriver, and if you don't, then tune in next Sunday at 4 p.m. for next week's episode. Make sure you're subscribed, by the way, because by the end of that one, you will definitely know how I feel about the sonic screwdriver. Now, when they finally get out of the TARDIS and onto Castrovalva, the Doctor goes missing, which is actually a really good cliffhanger because you see the Castrovalvians loitering around, so you believe he has been taken. However, I do have a slight down here. When Nissa and Tegan discover the blood and that the Doctor is missing, there's really no sense of urgency from them at all. I would have liked to have seen more. The Doctor is weak, he is in a vulnerable state, and therefore he is a number one priority, which has been made absolutely clear throughout the entirety of the episode so far. However, in this crucial moment of time when he is missing, this urgency is really lacking. We already know how the Doctor was going to stabilize himself. So we start getting glimpses now of how Peter will do the role as the stabilization starts to really occur. He is certainly a stark contrast to Tom, which is what Jonathan Nathan Turner probably would have wanted, as he quite likes opposites. Performance wise, he didn't really give off much of the direction he wanted to go in, and that's because he was displaying traits and lines from past Doctors in the first two episodes. However, he did give us some glimpses in episode 3. He has a slight pompous arrogance with it at this stage, but with a calmness. So when he snaps in this episode, you really felt it. He is also fully believable when he displays his intelligence and urgency. You see this when he discovers the recursive occlusion, or as he calls it also, caught in a space-time trap. Now, in the arc of New Beginnings, I think it is clear as to one of the reasons why Anthony Ainley was cast as the Master. In 3 episodes in this entire arc, he alone played Tremas, the Master, and the Portreeve. 3 characters. All 3 characters were made very different from each other. He was a very versatile actor, and in such a short space of time, he proved that. Now, I will admit also, he had me fooled the first time I watched Castrovalva. I didn't expect that he was the Portreeve, and then the second time I watched it years ago, I really should have realized, yeah, I should have got it straight away. You can see it in the eyes. And also, just as a little side note, something that makes me chuckle is the fact that the women in in Castrovalva are using the zero cabinet as their laundry basin. Just a genius idea. Now, I like that the Doctor explains what's happening in Castrovalva by using a hand-drawn map with the characters so that the viewer themselves are fully able to understand what is going on, because that could actually be a little bit complicated, I guess, to understand. So they actually put it out there for the audience to grasp onto it, especially the younger audience. It would have been slightly over the head, but I think they would have been able to achieve that. Now, the story has a quick resolution for a classic coup, that's for sure. However, do you feel it was rushed? So it's about 12 minutes into episode 4 where the resolution really actually starts to begin, and 14 minutes into that we get the reveal that the Master is the Portreeve, leaving about 10 minutes or so for a complete resolution. Now, I often critique New Who for its quick resolutions. However, because it was, in this case, almost the entirety of the 10 minutes that was used for the resolution, it still doesn't actually feel that rushed, in my opinion. And of course, we are left to wonder if the Master actually survived. We just don't know that. Now, I do have a really big complaint about this entire story, and that it actually spends way too long in the TARDIS, and the story itself is actually very padded, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. You may disagree, and that's absolutely fine. There isn't a lot that you could do plot wise with Castrovalva, the planet. Now, whilst this arc may never have been planned like the way we see it as an entire arc, because we had the two last episodes of Tom Baker, and then there's a gap, and then there's Castrovalva. The contrast to the Keeper of Traken would have been similar to Castrovalva, and that would have been a risk to take extremely quickly, if you understand what I mean. So I think this is why we spent a long time and having a lot of drama within the TARDIS itself. I do think, though, that the story, could have been consolidated into 3 episodes. For example, 1.5 episodes in the TARDIS and 1.5 episodes in Castrovalva, or 1 episode in the TARDIS with all that action and 2 complete episodes in Castrovalva. That being said, this regeneration story for Peter Davison's first ever story, it's my second favourite next to Spearhead from Space. And I think there is something to be said about stories that have potential bearings to everyday things in our lives in Doctor Who. Equivalent nods to everyday realities, like having our own lives built around us and them being manipulated. I'm such a conspiracy theorist, I know, but even though Castrovalva is not a real planet in Doctor Who, for me, with that computerized world, or block transfer computation as it's called in Doctor Who, well, what if that ever became real? Imagine if we were chipped. Imagine if we were controlled with computers. Is that not already happening? Who knows? Well, anyway, that's what I think of Castrovalva. What do you think about it? The next review will be of Rose, Christopher Eccleston's first story, and that means I've been given another Auton story, and I hate mannequins, so this is going to be interesting. It may mean another nightmare, because I had a nightmare after doing Spearhead from Space, but it won the vote, so therefore I'm doing it. The good thing about that is that does actually mean there's only one Auton story left to review after this, so no more nightmares unless they try and do one with Shooty. Oh no. Now leave a comment below. Chat about it, don't shout about it, and I will be back tomorrow for TV and Movie Monday at 4 p.m. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.